Welcome back, everyone. You are listening to Conscious Quest, the podcast for seekers. I am one of your hosts, Sarah Parlow. In a world that feels increasingly complex and polarized, my next guest is choosing a radical alternate approach to show up with the power of softness. Actress Cassandra James is joining us for an episode you don't want to miss, so stay tuned. Welcome to Conscious Quest, the LA-based podcast where we aim to stay conscious about everything current. Today, we are welcoming to the show actress, filmmaker, and healer Cassandra James, a proud Chinese American who grew up in Canada and is most known for her work on ABC's General Hospital and the Max original, Sort of. In 2023, she was acknowledged by the Human Rights Campaign for her leadership and service to the LGBT community and given their Visibility Award. Cassandra's role as Dr. Terry Randolph on General Hospital makes her the first trans woman to recur on daytime television. Her debut film, Claude, is currently in post-production and aims to shed new light on the trans community and centers around a woman's resilience in the face of hardship. In Cassandra's personal life and healing work, she strives to celebrate growth and softness in a hard world. Welcome, Cassandra James. Thank you for being here.
Absolutely. I'm so thrilled.
Good. How are you today?
Yeah, I'm good. I just finished, did some cranial sacral work this morning.
Brilliant.
Yeah, she's one of my healers and I so enjoy that work with her.
It sounds very LA.
Yes.
I often feel bad that other people across the country don't get to enjoy all the things that we have here.
Healers exist everywhere. I think you just have to work a little. Oh, thank you.
Yeah. A little hair.
I think you just have to work a little harder to track them down.
They are. They exist everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And they're essential.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So glad that you feel like things are in tune today. Tell us a little bit about you. What would you like our listeners to know about you?
Well, I thank you so much for that intro. It was very generous. People don't need to know that I wrote it, but you know.
We need some help sometimes in the podcast.
I am a deeply sensitive and fiercely artistic and powerfully resilient person.
Wow. I got tingles just hearing that. And I know for a fact that Cassandra is a force. I was lucky enough to ask her to jump in on a project that I wrote and co-directed and co-produced with Green Valdez about 6 years ago.
It's amazing.
We did a project called Lit Girl and you nailed it. And it was really about addressing the issue of relationship between cis guys and trans women. And I often felt like it was such a taboo subject. And it's something that we can talk about and navigate through and just shed a little light on. So thanks again for being part of that.
My mom still shows it to people.
Does she?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
And we rewatched it over Christmas. She was here for the holidays and it was actually, I was like, oh, I'm so happy this exists.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's had like 150,000 downloads on YouTube. So hopefully it's making an impact in all the right ways. I don't want to get too off topic from you, though. You've been an actress for some time now. Can you tell us about what drew you to that? And what do you see as some of your career highlights so far?
I've been a storyteller as long as I can remember. I've told this anecdote many times, but there's like all these home movies of me toilet training on the little potty.
Yeah.
And I'm on the camcorder and I'm like pointing at the book and like I'm not even really verbal yet. I'm just sort of making noises pointing at the picture book and the book is upside down.
So even then, from the earliest days.
Yeah, and I really fell in love with movies. Like I'm such a product of Hollywood in a lot of ways. I was born in California and I grew up in Canada. And my mom and my dad as well, but my mom predominantly we watched so many films. We always went to the movies and, you know, for me as like a closeted trans girl, I feel like it was a really deeply personal way to connect with humanity. I don't know about your experience, but I feel like a lot of trans folks can spend a lot of time in their lives kind of on the outside looking in.
Yeah.
Especially before you start living authentically. And for me, I was able to see like female characters that I identified with. It was very private. No one had to know who my favorite character in the film was.
Right.
And so my love of Hollywood and acting has really, it's so integral to my identity. And I've wanted to be in film and TV for as long as I can remember.
So it's really a cornerstone to who you are.
Yeah.
And you've been on General Hospital for how long now?
I think this will be my 6th year.
That's mind-blowing.
Yeah.
Spoiler, I actually auditioned for that role. And
everybody did.
Everybody in the community did. And it was actually quite thrilling for me to step onto the studio space of General Hospital and to see the sign. And I can't think of it going to a better person or a more fitting actor. So, I mean, tell us about that. What has that been like in an iconic breakthrough role, a recurring role for an out and open trans woman?
Yeah, it was so exciting when, we all got the breakdown that the show was interested in not only bringing on an out trans character, but that they were devoted to casting it authentically. There have been trans characters on soaps, predominantly played by cis women and a few cis men.
Right.
And, it was really exciting that they were going to kind of do right by us in this way. And to be the one to get to do that has been like a great privilege. It's like been a fascinating experience. I've learned so much. It's a really underappreciated, undervalued medium, and the work that we do is really hard in a lot of ways because it's so fast. We move really, really quickly. So it was a great way to dive into this amazing industry that I waited a long time to be part of. And I think there is something to be said about being the first in a space. It's been lonely at times.
Just going to ask you, how has the reception been by other actors and castmates? And
it's really interesting. I really feel like the daytime category, as I mentioned, is like deeply undervalued. And so I've actually felt like, for me, I've had to work. This industry will really keep your ego in check in a lot of ways. There are like inflated egos, of course, right? Because there is so much success and star power to be had, but there's also a lot of rejection. And so setting my own ego aside, for me it's been a little disappointing to feel that Terry, my character, hasn't been really given her flowers,
right?
Because I hear a lot of the queer community complaining that there's no trans women who are dating men on television, and there's no trans women who are doctors and playing, successful, well-loved people. And Terry, I feel like, has been written in a really beautifully heroic way. Mm-hmm. And I think that was an active choice that the production made. But, Terry is currently the chief of staff at General Hospital. So, a Chinese trans woman is the chief of staff at General Hospital on a show called General Hospital. I've had 2 romances on the show. So for me, it's been, I just love my job and I love to work, and it's such a joy. I always say any day on set is a good day.
Agreed. Y'all, for anyone who is not a performer or an actor, there is a special energy when you're on set, and it is quite addictive. So,
but to feel sort of like, I often wonder where she lands, in the zeitgeist and how people are receiving her. I can speak to, the fans are incredible. And I feel like when I first joined, I was certainly daunted, being the first in the space, really wondering how I would be received. And I will always, uplift and like be grateful and cheer on the fans, because they've been really warm and very receptive. They, statistically, the daytime audience is a little bit more conservative in terms of its demographic. And, I've been welcomed with open arms, and that's something I don't take for granted. It could have gone a different way. So, it's
I'm hearing this humility about it. Like, it's what a gift to be able to do this part. And then also, like, where would we be without the fan base? Like, it is so essential.
Oh, absolutely.
So,
I mean, that's why GH has been on for 60 years. We just celebrated our 60th birthday.
Yep, truth be told, I used to watch it as a child. I was a fan of Luke and Laura.
Okay,
and all of
amazing.
that.
I have worked with Jeannie Francis once or twice.
Iconic.
I know.
Was that amazing. Just mind-blowing for you?
Yeah, it's I mean, you know, I had a great education, you know, joining the show because I wasn't someone who watched soaps, and I don't have a family member who passed it down to me, which is a lot of the fans, you know, started watching because their parents watched and things. So I'm not that person. So joining the show and sort of wandering the halls and running into these, you know, iconic actors, you know, on the production side too, I do feel like I've also been really welcomed. People are really excited to see me, and I just love my job. It's a real treat.
So special. Do you come from a family of artists?
My dad is a cartoonist.
Okay.
Yeah, not professionally, I think, but when I was very, very young, he published like a book of cartoons called Artichokes.
Cute.
Yeah, and the bumper sticker on the book is "Matters of the Heart Matter."
Oh my God.
And it's very playful. And my mom, you know, has a deeply artistic, you know, she loves film, and I grew up listening to Joni Mitchell in her house, and you know, so I don't think that either of them would consider themselves artists by trade, but I grew up around art, and I think they also knew who I was very early on, and so I think I was allowed to really cultivate my artistry from a very young age.
We just had this talk actually about moms always know when you're trans. Like, mothers are in tune with that, and I have that experience. And Cassandra, you said the same.
Yeah.
I love that you are taking your artistry one step further. This is kind of a big moment for you. You have a piece coming out called Claude, which is a short film that you co-wrote and executive produced and starred in. And can you tell the audience a little bit about what that meant for you and what you want to share about it?
You know, I think I'm sure we'll discuss a little later. You know, the strike was really looming all last year, to be honest, even before it really officially began. And it happened very, very organically. We did a photo shoot for the General Hospital 60th anniversary in January of 2023.
Okay.
And I had done a lot of growing and evolving myself, and I felt like my task to myself that day was to really take up space and to not be sort of, I can be quite shy. And there was a lot of downtime. It was a wonderful day, you know, with so many of the actors. And I found myself having a really candid conversation about trans representation in Hollywood. And I feel like we've come so far, absolutely, and there's much to celebrate. And I still feel as though we are seen as a liability in this business in terms of at the highest level, you know, are we being invested in the same way? And are there as many opportunities for us? And when it comes to auditioning for non-trans roles, you know, there's still very real obstacles in place for us as trans artists in this biz.
True.
And I was having this conversation, and Finola Hughes is an actress on the show, and she's also a director. And she emailed me after the photo shoot, and she said, you know, I really took your conversation to heart. If there's a project that you want to produce, I want to direct it. I will direct it with you.
What an incredible, like, connection point.
Yeah.
Finola's been on for a long time.
I think so.
Yeah.
And we've become great friends. And so my co-writer, his name is Say Steves. We are collaborating on a number of projects, and we had actually made a joke that Claude was actually going to be our Pixar film one day. You know, with like a more like a childlike story. And when Finola, you know, opened herself to me, I thought, oh, well, I think a short is a really great place to start.
Yeah.
You know, they're still very expensive, you know, and yeah, but that's where we wanted to start. And then the script happened very quickly and very organically. And from that first conversation with Vinola in January, I mean, we filmed in July. So it was a really exciting opportunity. A woman I went to theater school with in Canada, she came on as a producer.
Wow.
Yeah, so we had this, we called it the Claude Core 4, and we built this production, right before the strike. It was, and then in terms of what the film is about, for me, it was time to tell this story. It's a deeply personal story. It's based off of much of my experience.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to close a chapter of my life. And as an artist, I felt like I needed to tell this story as a way to do that, to punctuate the healing that I'd done. I described the film as we meet her the moment before she decides she deserves better.
Oh, I hope all of you get to see this film because that really will make sense.
Mm-hmm.
And so if I could be so bold, really it delves into just the complication of relationships while being trans.
Yeah.
Would you say that's a fair?
Absolutely.
Right.
For me, so we made a choice to not show anyone's faces in the film until the final frame, for a number of reasons. But what sort of came out of that choice was what I hope will be a sort of universality to the film. I think a lot of people will see themselves in this film, trans or cis. For me, sort of, I bring my nuanced and intersectional humanity to the role, obviously, but from an objective place, I feel like the film is clearly about a power dynamic, an imbalance of power.
Right.
So the female character, they're her and him and mom. There's no names.
Yeah.
We meet her. She's quite lonely, and there is this sort of need to connect, and we see her make compromising choices to try and get that, and narratively we meet her when she decides to let someone back into her life that's not good for her, and we see what happens when she does that, and the consequences of those choices spark a healing journey. I believe that's how the film ends.
So relevant and so universal for a lot of women in the world. And so I do love that choice of not showing faces to really allow people to see themselves reflected in the film.
I wanted people to lean in, I think I'm very proud of the film. It's very nuanced. It's very subtle. You really have to pay close attention. And that was something that we really strive for.
Okay. And so the lead character besides you is Claude.
Yes.
And he is a stuffed rabbit.
My stuffed rabbit.
And can we talk about what that symbolized for you in the film?
I felt like when Sace and I began to work on the script, I really wanted to lift the veil on what I see as quite a pervasive isolation that I think is often quite specific to the trans experience, the trans feminine experience. There's a lot of otherness and othering that happens out in the world. And when I was thinking about the lens through which to explore that, it occurred to me that nobody sees what Claude sees. He's been in my life since I was a teenager, and so he's seen me transition and grow. He's been in my bedroom with all of my ex-boyfriends, and has been in proximity to so much of my grieving. And so we decided to frame the film through the lens of Claude. So it's not through his POV, but that was another reason why we lowered the frame so that it doesn't include anyone's faces. It's kind of like we're seeing things from his perspective in a way.
Yeah.
There's an intimacy there.
Yes.
And I think, Claude is, in a way, is a masculine character. It's a blue bunny. And so we see her there is this sort of like flirtatious kind of cheekiness in the juxtaposition of the him character who comes in and Claude. And there is this layer of like, oh, is he really the one for her? But when you look at the reality of the situation, like, I created Claude. And so Claude is actually a mirror.
Wow.
So even though it's like her kind of leaning on Claude as like, you know, like a comfort, like in a parallel way to like the him character when he leaves and betrays her, you know, but really that's her giving herself solace, right? Making, you know, because Claude is inanimate ultimately. Right. So there were these kinds of like layers to it, and I love Claude.
And so for such a short film and such an unassuming character in it, there's a lot packed into the just symbolism of it. So when do you plan to release, or are you going to make the festival circuit with Claude first?
That's what we're trying to do. Yeah. So I'm learning a lot as a filmmaker, and we're submitting to as many festivals as possible, and a lot of the submissions open up in the new year, so we'll just ride this thing until, you know, we can't anymore. I'm really excited to see what comes of it. I'm excited for Claude to have a life out in the open.
And so just to bring this point up, trans art really does matter. We are in sort of this critical juncture politically in the United States right now regarding trans existence. And so I truly believe our pathway of salvation, if you will, is through art. We have to show up as artists because you even indicated like it was part of your healing journey. That's one thing about art, but it also gives people reference points and allows them to process information where they, you know, may not have access to friends who are trans. I mean, the president of GLAAD made a speech recently, and she said more people claim to have seen a ghost than to have met a trans person
that they know of.
And so trans art is there to sort of fill the gap.
Yeah. And I wanted to be unapologetic about it, and there was a lot of back and forth as we were writing and even onto set around, you know, like telegraphing transness, and, you know, and at the end of the day I said, well, I am trans, and like this character is a version of me, you know, so I really wanted to sort of just radiate my own humanity through her. And I think we've created something that actually is quite universal in that way. Well,
we're so excited for Claude and to see it when it's available.
Thank you.
I would also love to talk as an actress to go through the strike last year, and you did the smartest thing, which was to monopolize time and use it creatively. But can we highlight sort of the struggles that are present, not only just for any actor or actress in the business in the midst of what happened last year, but especially for marginalized communities?
Yeah, I mean, I think I mentioned earlier that, you know, at the beginning of last year, we knew it was coming. So for me, you know, I felt the sort of this halting energy quite early on around, you know, like the auditions. And I did feel like a lot of the productions knew a strike was coming, so they didn't want to start up anything in case, you know. So, you know, in the media, the strike was, I don't remember how many days we went on in the end. But
was it like 3 or 4 months?
Yeah.
Over 100 days, I believe.
Experiencing it from the inside, you know, it really felt like we were shut down for the year. That was my experience. I really felt like things kind of grinded slowly to a halt in preparation for the strike. And then when the strike happened, it was like full stop. It was really like destabilizing and demoralizing. It was really hard to, you know, find your motivation. I had been going through a personal journey. So I really used that time to really find my peace. And I did a lot of work on myself in that time. And I'm grateful in a way for this space to do that. But there was this sort of looming thing, and we already work in such an unstable business. You don't know when the auditions are going to come in. You don't know when you're going to book and what, and that's what makes what we do kind of magical when it works out for you. But for us to all be in this sort of full stop place was, I think, really, really hard.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
So when we talk about the strike, I think a lot of people can have this misperception that it was actors being so incredibly greedy.
Oh.
And the reality is that for most actors in Hollywood, it's kind of like gig to gig and kind of scraping by. And there was a lot of talk in contractual discussions about residual income, which is an important bridge for artists, to get residuals from projects they've already participated in as a way to supplement until the next gig in a way.
Yeah.
So
I met a writer recently, and she said that residuals allowed her to say no. Which, I think there are a lot of commercial performers in our business who want to succeed financially. And then there are artists, and there are people who, and they can be intersectional as well. But I think for those of us who are trying to build careers with integrity, with all of the AI implications and all this stuff, it's really about being in command of our own artistry. And I think you're exactly right. Residuals play a huge part in that, because there are very few other industries where it's sort of an expectation that you have another job.
Yeah.
There's this amazing TED Talk that Liz Gilbert did many years ago where she talks about her dad, who was a chemical engineer. No one ever said to him, "Got chemical engineering block?" Like people don't really, there's this sort of like fear and expectation projected onto people who live creative careers that like, oh, well, that's not your real job. That's your hobby. And as someone who studied and trained to do what I do, and someone who has loved my job and has, built a deep dream for this work since as long as I can remember, I should be allowed to do that, and to like have passion for, and to like have a trajectory and a career with stability, and so I think that was a big part of it for me, was like, gosh, we just want to work, and we want to feel like we can work in a way that's actually going to sustain us.
It is interesting how the public can perceive artists, and yet at the same time, what we create is so essential for people who are, in some ways, actors and performers live out the dreams of people who watch them, who maybe don't feel confident or have access to them. It's an important role, because without art and imagination and vision, like, that's a critical component of what keeps us going as human beings.
And it's a very vulnerable thing to do what we do. I think what's wonderful is that there's like such a wide range of work out in the world, but I think for those of us who, really strive to really go deep, I mean, it's a deeply vulnerable thing to do this work and to be a mirror, to be connected to the human experience in a way that can be really challenging, Yeah.
So we'll stay tuned as to how things go, but we have a contract now.
Yeah.
And
I'm optimistic. I'm really excited to feel some momentum in my life. I think that it's interesting how that's gone in tandem, like the strike has kind of gone in tandem with my own healing journey. I think the pace really slowed, and I think that was also what I needed at the time. And so I'm feeling a little bit more stable and like healed. So I'm ready to like move.
So there's this sort of natural intelligence of the universe sometimes, I feel, how things work out.
I believe that. Yeah.
If we could pivot for a second, I would love to hear about the best part of your transition, what that was like for you. It sounds like you've had some good family support.
I'm very, very grateful. I think the best part for me has been the self-awareness. I think that we as a community are sort of, for me, it was like transition or die, right? I had no choice.
For most of us.
Yeah, I had no choice but to live authentically. But to take those steps is like such a bold thing. And I think that most people don't live their lives as intentionally as a lot of trans folks do. And there's something really profound and beautiful about that. I think it's unlocked so much of the rest of me. It's in like my transness has informed so much of the rest of me and my experience, my artistry, the way I want to exist in relationship, the way I want to connect, the way I feel about the world, my empathy. I think that has been the greatest gift is really coming home to myself and like understanding my place in it all.
It's such a powerful process because the trans journey is truly linked to the idea that whatever the world tells us about ourselves, intuitively, we are the ones that self-determine how we show up.
And that's everyone.
And that's everyone. It's a universal journey, would you say?
Yeah, I think that's where a lot of the, conservatism and a lot of the fear comes from, is because I think a lot of people who fear us, they actually fear the unrecognized potential in themselves. How dare we live our lives boldly, and how dare we shape our lives the way that we want to. Well, everyone should be empowered to do so.
Right. And I think for a lot of people, you mentioned the conservative movement, I think it's the fear of the responsibility of making the choices for your own life. It is on some level comforting to be told what to do. This is the hierarchy. These are the rules.
I call them the shoulds.
The shoulds.
My life should look like this. I should be in this kind of relationship. I should wear this. I should,
Right.
And I think that so much of my experience has been rejecting the shoulds and then choosing which ones I want, but it's from a more authentic, place, when it's intentional, when you choose. Yeah.
And how empowering and how liberating. I love this. Thank you for sharing that. So I want to bring up, you mentioned we had a talk on New Year's Eve a few weeks ago, and you mentioned this radical idea of showing up in the world with softness rather than wielding the sword and fighting. And I thought that was just such a powerful idea. And I'd love for you to talk to us about that a little bit.
Yeah. I think people have heard before, like, don't become what hurt you. And for me, I haven't spoken very publicly about a lot of my personal journey, but I describe myself as a high functioning survivor. I lived in survival mode for, for most of my life until the last 3 years. I feel like I really began to break free of that oppression. And, there were numerous times in my healing journey where I was tempted, invited, where I felt myself being drawn to harden myself to the world.
It's tempting.
Absolutely, because that's what most people do. And, I think with COVID too, there is such a closed offness to our experience. I think with social media, I think the algorithms, have made things so binary, more and more binary. There's less and less room for nuance. And what that does is we lose out on connection. We're now demographics. We're now left and right, black and white. And for me, and I haven't quite excavated where this comes from, but for me, I wanted to make a different choice. I wanted to remain. I think I witnessed some examples that I think led me to be like, oh, I actually don't want to move through the world that way. You know, I don't want to be tough and cold and judgmental. I still believe in love, even though I've had a really, really hard time since my transition. And I use the term open-hearted. For me, it's very important to remain open-hearted to the world because you want to live in flow. You know, I think when you live in resistance, that's where you create lots of anguish. We know that in the body, you know, that's where like injuries happen in sports. It's when there's no flow. You know, so for me, it came about quite organically. And then I really started to understand how uncomfortable it made people, how misunderstood my choices are. I think, and it kind of like emboldened my resolve to be like, oh, I actually am on the right path, and this feels good for me. I want to move through the world with grace, with softness. I value my peace, and I think that being kind is like a radical act in the world right now. You know, I think, yeah, I mean, it's okay. Like there is a lot to be angry about.
Sure.
You know, like I understand where that edge comes from. But for me, because I went through some extraordinarily terrible things, I knew that if I integrated that anger that I had received, it would fester into self-harm. Right. It would hurt me ultimately. And that actually the way to purge and move through is to actually do the opposite, which is forgiveness, you know, to choose softness. Yeah, it's not easy.
It's not easy, but it is radical. And if we look at the people in history who have been so revolutionary about this, you know, the Martin Luther Kings or the Gandhis or whatever, who really showed up from a heart-centered space. I mean, I'm hearing you listen to your internal barometer here of like, what does feel okay, you know, and there is a heaviness that comes with people hurting people, right? And so it's no way to operate. And I feel like, unfortunately, the majority of humanity is operating from that place.
Yeah.
But if we have people like you showing up and having breakthroughs like that, that creates a template that other people can follow.
Wouldn't that be nice? I mean, I'm working on it myself, and I hope to be. Yeah, I think radiation is really important. My very first tattoo, it says choose joy. And I used to always say choose joy because the alternative is too easy. In a world that sort of wants you to be afraid and bitter and jealous and insecure, because that's how people capitalize. That's how we spend our money. Yep. You know, is through fear and worry. You know, that's the world that we live in now. To choose joy, you know, is radical.
And I'm all for this type of radical. So you and I talked a little bit as well on New Year's about your unique brand of spirituality. Since we have a lot of spiritual topics on this podcast, I would love for you to share with our listeners what that brand is like.
I don't subscribe to any formal doctrine. You know, I've been healing for as long as I can remember. I love talk therapy. Yeah. I think it's been so important for me, and to feel held and to have space. I can be quite an overthinker. So for me to sit across from someone, and I'm a storyteller as well, right? So for me to sit across from someone whose job it is to show up for me in that moment has been really, really valuable at different points in my life and consistently. And I went to theater school, I trained, and a lot of the work as an actor there is a sort of, I wouldn't use the word spiritual necessarily, but there is this sort of esoteric, sort of unknown quality to that work. A lot of it is through the body. We do a lot of yoga and, voice work and connecting, your memory and experience to the body and like what that unlocks emotionally. I've been doing this kind of work for as long as I can remember. My mom and I are sort of hippy dippy. We describe ourselves in that way. I grew up getting massages. And so for me, I think when a series of circumstances really brought me to crisis and I felt like I had to do some radical work on myself, the meditation practice, the oracle cards, the journaling, the gemstones, it all sort of like revealed itself in a very organic way from a very like raw and like, I hesitate to use this word, but it's coming to mind, like from a very broken place. Mm-hmm. And I sort of culled these tools very organically. And for me, I'm really just following my joy and my pleasure and my curiosity. And my grandmother passed during COVID, I think in 2021. And, I'm half Chinese. And so she was the matriarch on my mom's side. And losing her really brought me home to my mom and our lineage, like the line, and the Chinese culture. And so I've done a lot of kind of coming home in that way as well. And so there is this sort of, I'm reading a lot about Chinese astrology and the zodiac systems. And there's just something really grounding in it for me. I think it's like hard to make sense of what I've been through. And so I think there was a bit of like, can I ground myself in these myths and this hippy dippy, people might perceive as hokiness. For me, it was like my saving grace in a lot of ways. Sure. It was really important for me to find something that worked for me.
Yeah. I love that you brought up the idea of myth. Myth is a very powerful vehicle, which has been really handed down for thousands of years through all cultures. And really, we did an episode about Joseph Campbell and the power of myth. And, we really connected that myths enable us to make sense of things that we cannot make sense of in the conscious mind. Mm-hmm. It's almost like our subconscious, symbolic aspects of our subconscious speaking to us in a way. Mm-hmm. You brought up the word broken too, and what came to mind for me is, it's the wounds in us. Those are the places where the light comes in.
I knew you were going to say that.
You knew it. You felt that.
Yeah, it's so true. I mean, I'm someone who like doesn't live. I try not to live with regret. Yeah. I think a lot of my practice has to do with mindfulness, being as present as possible. And I think that when you regret, there's sort of an attachment to the past, and you can't change the past. I don't wish what I went through upon anyone, and I want to be the change. I want to make sure that I don't hurt people don't hurt people. That was another part of my radical softness commitment, was around understanding that what happened to me was not okay. And there was a lot of grieving. There is a lot of grieving to do with that and radical acceptance. But the way through,
we have to go through it, right? We can't go around it. We have to go through it.
Yeah, the way through, I found myself again, and I unlocked, new aspects of myself. I feel brand new again, and there's something very raw and kind of tender about it, but I wouldn't have it any other way.
It really sounds like a hero's journey in a way, right? You had to leave the homeland of like the self that you knew because of these experiences. You had to gather new tools and cycle back and be integrated with the new information. And that is the beauty of transformation and the alchemy that I I feel drives evolution for human beings. I would love for you to share some of the astrology cards you brought.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
Can we show everybody
Absolutely.
what they are?
So, I went to a trauma recovery program last year. And one of the courses that we did was a sound bath twice a week. And the facilitator used an animal totem, like oracle deck. And I just thought that was so whimsical and I really resonated with it. So when I was discharged from that program, I bought myself that deck.
Brilliant.
But I had this sort of desire to find medicine that was closer in connection to me and to my heritage and my culture. So I looked online and I tried to find specifically like a Chinese oracle deck.
Okay.
And I did.
Brilliant.
So this is it. It's Vicky Iskandar's.
Maybe we can pull it up there to show everybody. Take a look. Very
the
cool.
Chinese 5 Elements Oracle. And for me, it's just it's a nice let's say a nice touching point for me in the morning. So I start my day, I meditate, and then I put on some spa music.
Got to.
And I light my Palo Santo. I kind of bring in the energy, and then I'll start with a card, and then from there I journal.
Okay. So we'll do that process for people who are watching and listening. Yeah. Okay. So do you want me to light them? You want to do that?
I'll do it.
Okay.
I got us. Yeah.
Love this.
I know.
This is a first for our show, but I'm so here for it right now.
Great. Yeah, I've really, and I don't know, I just really enjoy it. And there's been something kind of, I think grounding and like a lot of my life really slowed down dramatically. And so for me, it was like, I needed these grounding, like these posts in my day. I needed things to do that were going to make me feel good.
Yeah, these rituals. Oh, I'm loving this. Yeah. And it is magical how things like this just clear the energy.
Mm-hmm. So I've heard that Palo Santo is to invite energy in, and that sage is for when you want to clean things.
Ah, I love this.
Yeah.
Thank you for that hot tip.
Yeah. So I was told that you're not supposed to overdo the sage because you can kind of drain your energy. Okay. So I switched to using this, and then when I have really hard days, then I will sage first. But there's things I need to let go of or release in the morning. Yeah.
Great. Okay. So we have properly Palo Santo'd.
Yeah. Really, and I don't claim to, this is not my medicine. This is very old medicine, and for me, it's, I'm just grateful that it's been commercialized and made available to someone who is on a healing journey and has really needed some tools that feel good. So that's what it is for me. So I'm just shuffling the deck. That's what I do every morning.
So getting your energy into it. It's essential.
And then I'll ask you to cut the deck for me so that you can participate as well.
Right.
Or if you want to shuffle it, you're welcome to.
I'll say cut it thin so I win.
Okay. And then we'll just sort of lay them out here.
Brilliant.
And you go ahead and take a card.
Okay, I'm going to go with this one. I always love to go with my first instinct.
The Fire Tiger.
Oh my.
And the mantra here is share your gifts.
Oh, okay.
So what I do then, there's a lot of reading at the beginning of the book, but you can just dive right in and read what the card is about. And so I'll read it to you. The fire, here, you have the card. The Fire Tiger pillar offers positivity and support when it appears in a reading. The tiger is highly creative and inventive as a yang wood sign, while yang fire in the heavenly frequency is associated with joy and unconditional love. As wood produces fire, those who channel the creative force also cultivate inner joy in the process. This card is a confirmation that you're using your gifts wisely.
Oh.
It's now time to share your gifts and spread your joy to a larger community, like on a podcast. The creative force within you is emerging stronger than ever. You've been listening to your calling and enjoying the creative process. Keep doing what makes your heart sing to stoke the fire within. Yang Earth and Yang Fire hidden in the tiger will help you persevere and be consistent in your quest. You can always find inspiration from within your heart. Relax into the creative process and take as much alone time as you need. The creative well within will never run out. Creativity is a gift from the universe that keeps on giving the more we foster it. No matter what line of work you're in, your creative approach is what makes you stand out and be noticed. Message from heaven. Yang Fire, like the sun, shares its light generously and unconditionally. Offering your services will serve as a healing tool not only for yourself, but also for others. Message from Earth. The tiger doesn't hold back, and neither should you. Think big and make a difference to the world with your creative power.
Oh my God. Well, I have to say this couldn't be an any more appropriate card because
I've been charging it, so it's got some good juice.
Everyone, this is juicy. Hit the nail on the head. I'm really diving into my creativity. So thank you for that.
I mean, you can't make it up. Like, I just feel like I always get the card that I need at the right time. And if that's like the power of suggestion, so be it.
Yeah.
Like I said, I really think that this world that we live in is so chaotic and like, who am I to judge like a person's choices in terms of the tools that they want to bring into their life? And I'm having a lot of fun with it.
Brilliant. And you pulled a card too.
I did.
Should I read yours? Or?
If you'd like, or I can happily read it.
Yeah, whatever works.
Okay. So I've drawn this card before.
Okay.
And I've noticed that too, that there's a lot of the cards that are recurring for me. So there's 60 cards in the deck.
Okay.
In the Chinese system, there's 5 elements.
Okay.
Wood, earth, fire, water, and metal.
Okay.
And there are 12 signs in the zodiac. So each zodiac has their own element.
That makes sense.
5 times 12 is 60.
According to what math I remember.
Yeah. I'm terrible. Okay, let's see here. Water dog, play with the waves. The water dog pillar, with Yang water's oceanic force over the dog's insurmountable Yang earth, may seem ominous at first. Imagine tidal waves pouring over a mountain. But firm, faithful earth element conquers water, the element associated with fears. The waves have no chance of beating the mountain that has stood for eternity. The intuitive dog knows when to jump into the water with glee and play with the waves. Our fears may overwhelm us, but they can be contained with positive thinking, confidence, and faith. Setting short-term goals and having a long-term vision can help steer us away from our initial fears. Yang water, like fast-moving currents, also indicates rapid change. There's something new waiting when this card appears, but you must first get yourself to the other side of fear. Are you ready to step out of your comfort zone? If you're already feeling a sense of discomfort, accept that you're uncomfortable and pat yourself on the back, which I shall. For that means you've taken a step forward. It's rough out there, but trust that all will be well despite the ebb and flow. Your skills, intuition, and perseverance will keep carrying you forward. The water dog encourages you to embrace your fears and take a risk. Play a game of what ifs. Nothing in life is certain. The best case scenario may take you on the greatest adventure of your life. If you can live with the worst case scenario, then it's worth taking the risk. Prepare for the best, but don't fear the worst. Message from heaven. Like Yang's waters, ocean invites fear, but also awe and a sense of adventure. Befriend and honor your fears. Be curious and question them so you can move on once you pass the fear period. Message from Earth. The dog's earth element is a stabilizing influence. Stay grounded and connected to your center to navigate through life with calm and peace.
That's so beautiful.
Yeah, I've gotten this one a few times actually. My mantra this year is one day at a time, slow and steady.
Beautiful.
Because I have I am a deeply anxious and a deeply self-conscious person. I can be quite hard on myself and very judgmental. So for me, it is really important for me to find a sense of play and like move through fear by making short-term goals, actionable things that I can do every day. I've been diagnosed with complex PTSD, which one of my main symptoms is that I have a tendency to really freeze.
Yeah.
I think it's happening to a lot of us, the sort of the doom scrolling, the hours in bed, So for me, it's been really helpful on days when I have, something actionable that I can do, something concrete. I cook if I don't have something to do outside of the house, the meditation. At least I can come back to that practice.
Yes.
It's been really, really helpful when things were quite unstable for me.
Thank you for sharing all this. And you're just illustrating how necessary it is to have things that ground us. And small actionable goals definitely enable us to have a sense of accomplishment and confidence so that we can go on to, like you said, achieve those bigger goals down the road.
Yeah.
This has been amazing. Thank you for sharing this incredible spiritual path with us, Cassandra. What else, in closing, would you like to share with our listeners about what's coming up for you and what your dreams or aspirations might be for 2024?
I am looking forward to continuing my healing journey. I think that I really wish that for people out in the world. I think there's a lot of burnout happening right now. I think there's a lot of people in crisis, and I think that we don't talk about mental health in a way that I think is really holistic. I think it's really important to understand that the body remembers. We store trauma in the body. It's important to, when you can, get out of bed and do some physical work or walks. Connect with nature. Something that I've learned in my reading through Chinese astrology is that 2023 marked the end of the age of 8.
Okay.
Which was marked by an excess of yang energy.
So the masculine.
Which is the masculine.
Okay.
I think we have seen masculinity grow quite toxic, grow quite violent in the world.
Yeah.
And Chinese New Year is February 10th this year and marks the beginning of the age of 9. Another 20-year cycle that will bring us back to the yin, the divine feminine.
It is time.
I'm really excited. I think in our lifetime, we'll see a real return to holistic thinking, community, farm to table, knowing where our food comes from, a grounding in the body, connecting with community, the family unit, and we'll see how that ripples out politically and commercially. But I'm really excited because I think, and maybe it's a product of my transition, but I love the divine feminine and I find it attractive wherever it appears.
It's that radical idea of softness that we've been talking about all along. And I'm so excited that this episode is going to come out right before Chinese New Year to punctuate everything you're talking about. Yeah. Cassandra, where can our listeners find you?
If you must engage with me on social media.
Must, yes.
I use it reluctantly. My Instagram is at Cassandra James with an underscore. And that is my primary hub. It's mostly a workspace, but there is lots to see there. And I speak very candidly about my experience as a trans woman. And it's an opportunity, a place for me to celebrate my work.
And we're celebrating with you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being with us today. Everyone, please check out Cassandra James, star of General Hospital. Look out for Claude.
At Claude the Film.
At Claude the
on
Film
Instagram.
On Instagram. Please check it out. And until then, stay conscious, y'all.
Absolutely.